Are you ready to uncover one of humanity's greatest mysteries? Don't miss the chance to delve into the secrets of one of history's most sacred objects, the Ark of the Covenant. A relic so powerful that, according to legend, simply touching it could result in instant death. It's not just a sacred artifact, but a direct link between heaven and earth. The Ark carries a mystique that spans millennia, weaving together faith, mystery, and a spiritual technology so profound that few dare to even comprehend it. But what if everything you've been told so far is only the surface? What if what's hidden behind ancient texts, veiled in symbols and metaphors, holds knowledge that Jesus himself understood deeply and that could transform your connection to the divine today? The Ark of the Covenant first appears as a divinely ordained vessel given to Moses atop Mount Sinai. Made of acacia wood and lined with gold, it contained the 10 Commandments. Yet, for those who dare to investigate, it reveals itself to be far more than a simple chest of holiness. Every detail, from the way it was transported, to how it was to be handled, and even the design of the tabernacle where it was housed, suggests a profound understanding of spiritual and energetic engineering. Why such exactness for an object that, on the surface, only symbolized a divine covenant? This enigma hasn't gone unnoticed by scholars, archaeologists, and spiritualists for centuries. The Ark has captivated emperors, sparked secret expeditions, and inspired adventure films. Yet, what truly fascinates isn't just its mysterious disappearance, but what it represents, what it continues to represent. Behind its humble appearance, the Ark may hold an ancient key capable of unlocking dormant states of consciousness, reconnecting humanity to the eternal, and revealing the true purpose of our existence. Biblical accounts suggest that the Ark didn't merely represent God's presence, it was God's presence. When the Hebrew people marched with it, they experienced victories against overwhelming odds. When it rested in the tabernacle, the divine cloud of glory descended and stayed. There are numerous records of severe punishment for anyone who dared to touch it or approach it improperly, hinting that its power was far from symbolic, it was real. And most unsettling of all, this power seemed to have a life of its own. It responded to purity, reacted to true worship, and influenced everything within its proximity. This field of influence has sparked debates among spiritual physicists and engineers, who have speculated that the Ark could function as an electromagnetic capacitor, a scalar energy generator, or even a vibrational resonance machine. Though these ideas might sound bold, they resonate with descriptions in the Bible that speak of lights, sounds, tremors, and physical manifestations occurring in the Ark's presence. If we view the Bible as a coded text, where mystical language unveils deeper truths, the Ark begins to emerge as something far beyond a simple religious artifact. But what does all this have to do with Jesus? More than you might think. While the Gospels never directly mention the Ark, they are filled with symbolism and enigmatic statements from Christ that seem to suggest a deep understanding of this sacred instrument. Jesus grew up in a time when stories of the Ark were passed down orally, studied in synagogues, and carried a weight of mystery. His mission, his symbolism as the new covenant, and his remarkable healing powers all point to a mastery of the same divine principles that govern the Ark. This brings us to a truth many might prefer to overlook. What if, when Jesus spoke of being the temple, the way, and the life, he was not only referring to himself as a spiritual figure, but also to an internal mechanism that replaced the original role of the Ark in the tabernacle? Did the tearing of the temple veil at the moment of his death signify merely a physical event, or did it mark the end of the need for an intermediary between man and the divine? These questions invite us into a deeper understanding of the role of the Ark and of Christ. The Ark's disappearance remains one of history's great mysteries. It vanishes from historical records after the destruction of the First Temple, and the silence surrounding its fate only deepens its aura of intrigue. Was it taken by the Babylonians? Hidden by priests? Or, as some suggest, is it concealed in Ethiopia, as Orthodox monks claim? Perhaps, as some rabbis and mystics believe, it was removed from this plane entirely, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to comprehend its true significance. This line of thought ties directly to the coming of Jesus and the concept of progressive divine revelation. Perhaps the ark's power lies not in its physical form, but in what it represented, a direct, unmediated connection with the source of all existence. What's truly captivating about the ark is not just its ancient history, but the palpable sense that it still vibrates somewhere, whether hidden away on a distant mountain or deeply embedded within the awakened human being. The ark may have been the most powerful symbol of the union between matter and spirit, technology and transcendence. This fusion is embodied in the figure of Jesus, not just as a moral teacher, but as an initiated master of the ancient mysteries. Every detail of the ark, from its dimensions to its adornments, seems to be encoded with cosmic knowledge. The cherubs with outstretched wings, the golden mercy seat, the rings and poles for transportation, everything resonates with patterns found in other ancient cultures. Egypt, India, Mesopotamia, all speak of sacred boxes, vehicles of gods, and portals to the divine. In this context, the ark is yet another link in the grand, universal tapestry of spiritual wisdom. The real question we must confront is not where the ark is today, but why do we still feel its call? Something deep within us recognizes the truth when we encounter it. Perhaps, as we rediscover its story, we are not simply uncovering an ancient artifact. Instead, we might be awakening something that has always been within us, a forgotten spark, a severed connection, an inner temple yearning to be reactivated. At the heart of this journey lies the figure of Jesus, not as the conventional image of a religious figure, but as the profound master who understood the deepest mysteries. He carried within himself the very power of the ark, perhaps because, here's the real secret, the ark was never lost. It simply became flesh and dwelt among us. Are you ready to unlock the deeper mysteries of spiritual technology and divine presence? Dive into the hidden knowledge of the Ark of the Covenant and the sacred spaces that house the presence of the divine. Discover how these ancient symbols not only connect us to the past but also to the power that still flows within us today. The Ark of the Covenant was not merely an object, it was the heart of the tabernacle, the place where divine energy was concentrated and redistributed, forming the very core of spiritual power. Positioned at the absolute center of the Holy of Holies, the Ark served as an energy source, one that radiated a field of vibrational coherence. According to many scholars of occultism and sacred geometry, the Ark's placement in the tabernacle follows a toroidal pattern, the same way the universe organizes energy. This cosmic design transformed the tabernacle into a living spiritual reactor, capable of generating an energetic field that directly impacted anyone who approached it with reverence. The priest entering the Holy of Holies wasn't simply performing a ritual, he was tuning into the divine frequency, aligning himself with the energy of the universe. This idea becomes even more intriguing when we explore similarities with other ancient civilizations. The Egyptians, for example, used the chambers of their pyramids to facilitate spiritual ascension, while the ziggurats of Mesopotamia were built with similar designs that allowed for direct contact with the gods. In every case, the architecture was carefully oriented toward the sky, featuring portals, purification chambers, and sacred divisions to create a bridge between earth and heaven. The Hebrew tabernacle, though following this same blueprint, offered a crucial difference. It was designed not to manipulate the divine, but to humbly receive the direct presence of the Creator. The spiritual functions of the tabernacle go far beyond what traditional theology teaches. When we look at the practices of the priests, it becomes clear that they were not merely offering sacrifices, they were performing a profound inner alchemy. The aroma of incense, the sounds of sacred instruments, the specific garments they wore, and the ritualistic movements they made all came together to create a highly charged, energetically potent environment. The high priest, upon entering the Holy of Holies, would enter a state of ecstasy, a trance that allowed him to commune directly with the divine, receiving profound revelations in the presence of the Ark. This understanding leads to an even more profound realization. The tabernacle was not simply a physical structure, it was a living, spiritual mechanism. The ark served as the source of the divine energy, but the tabernacle itself was the body that sustained and amplified this energy. Just as the human body houses the soul, the tabernacle housed the presence of the divine. Even more strikingly, this sacred architecture was a mirror of the human being. The tabernacle reflected the journey of the soul, the outer courtyard represented the physical body, the holy place symbolized the emotional and mental realms, and the Holy of Holies represented the spirit. It was a blueprint for spiritual initiation, guiding the soul back to direct communion with the divine. In this sense, the tabernacle served as a map for the journey toward the divine presence, a map that Jesus himself followed and embodied in his own teachings. The Gospel of John speaks of the Word becoming flesh and dwelling among us. The word dwelling used here is tabernacled, which is not a coincidence. This term indicates that Jesus saw himself as the new tabernacle, the new dwelling place of the divine, replacing the physical ark with a living, breathing body. This could only be true if Jesus had a deep understanding of the spiritual workings behind the original tabernacle. Jesus' acts of healing, his teachings on the scriptures, and his confrontations with the Pharisees all point to a profound knowledge that extended far beyond the written laws. One of the most fascinating aspects of the tabernacle is its use of sound and frequency. The bells on the priest's clothing, the Levitical chants, the blast of the shofar, each of these resonated within the structure like a spiritual symphony. These sounds were not random, each note had a purpose. They were meant to align energies, purify the spiritual field, and open channels for connection with the divine. This intentional use of sound echoes practices found in ancient Vedic and Tibetan traditions, where mantras and wind instruments are used to awaken and align energy centers. The tabernacle, then, was far more than just a physical building, it was a vibrational portal, a living mechanism that allowed for communion between the realms. And at its center was the ark, like a divine spark residing within the human heart. Jesus, understanding this deep wisdom, didn't merely fulfill a prophetic role, he updated the system. He became the living tabernacle, offering a new way for us to connect with the divine, not through ritual, but through presence, purity, and intention. By embodying the tabernacle, Jesus provided us with a living model of connection to the divine that was no longer exclusive to priests or temples. It became available to all who sought it with a pure heart. This revelation calls us to abandon dead religiosity and rediscover the sacred within ourselves. The sacred structure is no longer confined to temples or shrines. It resides within our bodies, in our hearts. The same patterns that activated the presence of the divine in the ark can now be accessed through intention, purity, and awakened consciousness. And here lies the question, why does the Ark of the Covenant remain conspicuously absent from the canonical Gospels? Could it be that someone like Jesus, deeply immersed in Jewish tradition and the practices of the temple in Jerusalem, would be unaware of the most sacred object in his culture? Or might the silence surrounding the ark in the Gospels be intentional, a veil concealing knowledge reserved only for those with eyes to see and ears to hear? Jesus was born at a time when the ark had already disappeared from the physical temple, but its symbolic memory lingered, a silent wound in the heart of the nation. The priests continued their rituals, but the core of the divine presence was no longer there. The temple had become an empty shell, a body without a soul. It was precisely in this context that Jesus emerged, challenging the religious establishment, renewing spiritual practices, and offering a new understanding of what it truly means to be a dwelling place for the divine. There is a subtle yet profound connection between Jesus and the Essenes, a mystical Jewish sect who lived in the desert, particularly in Qumran near the Dead Sea. The manuscripts discovered there reveal a spiritual lineage dedicated to purity, hidden knowledge, and messianic expectation. Many contemporary scholars believe that John the Baptist was connected to the Essenes, and if he was the precursor to Jesus, it's plausible that Jesus himself was initiated into these hidden teachings. The Dead Sea Scrolls also mention a heavenly Ark of the Covenant, suggesting that the concept of the ark was not limited to its physical form. This heavenly ark was accessible only to those with open spiritual eyes, exactly the kind of knowledge that Jesus communicated through his teachings, often saying things like, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear," and, "My kingdom is not of this world." The Ark of the Covenant was not merely an object, it was the heart of the tabernacle, the place where divine energy was concentrated and redistributed, forming the very core of spiritual power. Positioned at the absolute center of the Holy of Holies, the Ark served as an energy source, one that radiated a field of vibrational coherence. According to many scholars of occultism and sacred geometry, the Ark's placement in the tabernacle follows a toroidal pattern, the same way the universe organizes energy. This cosmic design transformed the tabernacle into a living spiritual reactor, capable of generating an energetic field that directly impacted anyone who approached it with reverence. The priest entering the Holy of Holies wasn't simply performing a ritual, he was tuning into the divine frequency, aligning himself with the energy of the universe. This idea becomes even more intriguing when we explore similarities with other ancient civilizations. The Egyptians, for example, used the chambers of their pyramids to facilitate spiritual ascension, while the ziggurats of Mesopotamia were built with similar designs that allowed for direct contact with the gods. In every case, the architecture was carefully oriented toward the sky, featuring portals, purification chambers, and sacred divisions to create a bridge between earth and heaven. The Hebrew tabernacle, though following this same blueprint, offered a crucial difference. It was designed not to manipulate the divine, but to humbly receive the direct presence of the Creator. The spiritual functions of the tabernacle go far beyond what traditional theology teaches. When we look at the practices of the priests, it becomes clear that they were not merely offering sacrifices, they were performing a profound inner alchemy. The aroma of incense, the sounds of sacred instruments, the specific garments they wore, and the ritualistic movements they made all came together to create a highly charged, energetically potent environment. The high priest, upon entering the Holy of Holies, would enter a state of ecstasy, a trance that allowed him to commune directly with the divine, receiving profound revelations in the presence of the Ark. This understanding leads to an even more profound realization. The tabernacle was not simply a physical structure, it was a living, spiritual mechanism. The Ark served as the source of the divine energy, but the tabernacle itself was the body that sustained and amplified this energy. Just as the human body houses the soul, the tabernacle housed the presence of the divine. Even more strikingly, this sacred architecture was a mirror of the human being. The tabernacle reflected the journey of the soul, the outer courtyard represented the physical body, the holy place symbolized the emotional and mental realms, and the Holy of Holies represented the spirit. It was a blueprint for spiritual initiation, guiding the soul back to direct communion with the divine. In this sense, the tabernacle served as a map for the journey toward the divine presence, a map that Jesus himself followed and embodied in his own teachings. The Gospel of John speaks of the Word becoming flesh and dwelling among us. The word dwelling used here is tabernacled, which is not a coincidence. This term indicates that Jesus saw himself as the new tabernacle, the new dwelling place of the divine, replacing the physical ark with a living, breathing body. This could only be true if Jesus had a deep understanding of the spiritual workings behind the original tabernacle. Jesus' acts of healing, his teachings on the scriptures, and his confrontations with the Pharisees all point to a profound knowledge that extended far beyond the written laws. One of the most fascinating aspects of the tabernacle is its use of sound and frequency. The bells on the priest's clothing, the Levitical chants, the blast of the shofar, each of these resonated within the structure like a spiritual symphony. These sounds were not random, each note had a purpose. They were meant to align energies, purify the spiritual field, and open channels for connection with the divine. This intentional use of sound echoes practices found in ancient Vedic and Tibetan traditions, where mantras and wind instruments are used to awaken and align energy centers. The tabernacle, then, was far more than just a physical building. It was a vibrational portal, a living mechanism that allowed for communion between the realms. And at its center was the Ark, like a divine spark residing within the human heart. Jesus, understanding this deep wisdom, didn't merely fulfill a prophetic role, he updated the system. He became the living tabernacle, offering a new way for us to connect with the divine, not through ritual, but through presence, purity, and intention. By embodying the tabernacle, Jesus provided us with a living model of connection to the divine that was no longer exclusive to priests or temples. It became available to all who sought it with a pure heart. This revelation calls us to abandon dead religiosity and rediscover the sacred within ourselves. The sacred structure is no longer confined to temples or shrines. It resides within our bodies, in our hearts. The same patterns that activated the presence of the divine in the Ark can now be accessed through intention, purity, and awakened consciousness. And here lies the question: why does the Ark of the Covenant remain conspicuously absent from the canonical Gospels? Could it be that someone like Jesus, deeply immersed in Jewish tradition and the practices of the temple in Jerusalem, would be unaware of the most sacred object in his culture? Or might the silence surrounding the Ark in the Gospels be intentional, a veil concealing knowledge reserved only for those with eyes to see and ears to hear? Jesus was born at a time when the Ark had already disappeared from the physical temple, but its symbolic memory lingered, a silent wound in the heart of the nation. The priests continued their rituals, but the core of the divine presence was no longer there. The temple had become an empty shell, a body without a soul. It was precisely in this context that Jesus emerged, challenging the religious establishment, renewing spiritual practices, and offering a new understanding of what it truly means to be a dwelling place for the divine. There is a subtle yet profound connection between Jesus and the Essenes, a mystical Jewish sect who lived in the desert, particularly in Qumran near the Dead Sea. The manuscripts discovered there reveal a spiritual lineage dedicated to purity, hidden knowledge, and messianic expectation. Many contemporary scholars believe that John the Baptist was connected to the Essenes, and if he was the precursor to Jesus, it's plausible that Jesus himself was initiated into these hidden teachings. The Dead Sea Scrolls also mention a heavenly Ark of the Covenant, suggesting that the concept of the Ark was not limited to its physical form. This heavenly Ark was accessible only to those with open spiritual eyes, exactly the kind of knowledge that Jesus communicated through his teachings, often saying things like, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear," and "My kingdom is not of this world." When Jesus enters the temple and drives out the money changers, it is often seen as an act of moral indignation. But when we view it through the lens of the tabernacle's mysteries, this act takes on an even greater significance. It was a purification of a corrupted sacred space, a call to restore the true meaning of the temple as a place where heaven and earth meet. Jesus often spoke of his Father's house, saying, "In my Father's house, there are many mansions," referring not just to heaven, but to levels of consciousness, the very layers that the tabernacle's design symbolized. When Jesus promised that rivers of living water would flow from within the believer, he was invoking the spiritual river that connected the Garden of Eden, the temple, and the Arkansas. This river of life was a continuous flow of divine energy that nourished the soul, much as the Ark had done for the people of Israel. And when Jesus healed with a word, a touch, or a glance, he was demonstrating mastery over energy fields, vibrational alignment, and presence, exactly as the Ark was said to do in ancient times. Wherever the Ark rested, healing, victory, and liberation followed. The same signs accompanied Jesus wherever he went, further cementing his role as the living fulfillment of the divine presence. Are you ready to dive deep into the ancient mysteries that have fascinated humankind for centuries? To uncover the truths hidden in plain sight, just beneath the surface of religious traditions and spiritual symbols? Let's journey together to explore the profound role of the Ark of the Covenant, not just as a religious artifact but as a key to unlocking the very essence of divine presence, vibration, and energy. It's no coincidence that Jesus, whose life and teachings still resonate through history, never directly spoke about the Ark of the Covenant in the way many might expect. Instead, his silence, especially on such a central object in Jewish tradition, holds far more weight than simple omission. This silence is part of the initiatory nature of his mission. Just as the Ark was hidden away, accessible only to the high priest once a year, the deepest mysteries of the universe were not meant to be freely handed out to anyone unprepared. Jesus conveyed these profound truths not through straightforward declarations but through parables, gestures, and symbols. To you, it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, he told his disciples, but to the rest, everything was communicated in parables. This method was not meant to conceal out of fear but rather to protect the sacred wisdom. For, as history has shown, receiving a secret without the necessary spiritual maturity can turn a blessing into a curse. This approach is not unique to Jesus but reflects the teachings of ancient mystery schools that spanned cultures from Egypt to India. These schools veiled their deepest knowledge, not out of elitism but out of spiritual responsibility. They understood that such wisdom, when prematurely revealed, could have devastating consequences. And Jesus, in this context, operated as a master of veiled wisdom. He understood that the true presence of the Ark was not a matter of finding a lost object, but of awakening an internal, invisible force, a divine reality within each person. Jesus became, in essence, the new Ark, the new mercy seat, and the new covenant. For those who were ready, his words were like the divine flames of light burning between the cherubim, revealing a path of profound transformation. As the Gospels so powerfully affirm, God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself. What was once accessible only through rituals, temples, and sacred objects had now become alive and embodied in Jesus himself. He wasn't merely a figurehead representing the divine, he was the altar, the priest, and the Ark all rolled into one. He embodied within his being the three levels of the tabernacle, transcending physical space and ritual. His life was an open invitation for others to discover how they, too, could become living temples, the dwelling places of the divine. Jesus' ministry was not simply about healing the sick or delivering moral teachings. It was about reintroducing humanity to an ancient spiritual science that had been forgotten and lost over time. His followers, his disciples, were more than mere believers, they were initiates, students in the great mysteries of the kingdom. This kingdom was not a distant place in the heavens, but a state of consciousness that was accessible here and now. And in this state, the Ark of the Covenant, now symbolized by the divine spark within each person, became accessible again. The kingdom of God is within you, Jesus proclaimed, not as a metaphor but as a powerful calling. His words weren't just teachings, they were keys to unlocking the divine presence that had always resided within. Thus, Jesus' silence about the Ark wasn't an omission, it was a revelation. He didn't need to name the Ark or even speak of it directly, because he had become the living embodiment of what the Ark represented. For those who were open, those who truly listened to his words and felt the resonance of his presence, they were unknowingly drawing close to the Holy of Holies. They were experiencing the same divine presence that once rested between the cherubim on the mercy seat. But now, this presence had eyes, a voice, compassion, and walked among men as a living light, revealing the eternal truth that had always been. As scholars and archaeologists have delved deeper into the biblical descriptions of the Ark of the Covenant, a bold theory has emerged. What if the Ark was not simply a religious symbol, but a true spiritual technological device capable of emitting energy fields with real, tangible effects on the environment and the people who came near it? At first, this idea may seem outlandish, but as we explore the details of the Ark and the reported experiences surrounding it, a fascinating new panorama begins to form, one that unites sacred engineering, forgotten science, and pure spirituality. The specifications of the Ark, described in Exodus, are both striking and deliberate. A rectangle of acacia wood, light and durable, coated in gold inside and out, with two golden cherubim placed upon the mercy seat, This combination is far from arbitrary. Today, engineers and physicists, upon examining these materials and design, might immediately think of a capacitor, an electrical component used to store energy. The ark, with its alternating layers of conductors and insulators, could theoretically generate and retain high-intensity electrostatic energy fields. This could explain some of the extraordinary phenomena reported in biblical times: people dying instantly for improperly touching the ark, enemies falling ill or dying after capturing it, and miraculous victories occurring when the ark was carried correctly. The ark was not just a symbol of faith, it seemed to be an active source of power, a living field of influence. Some researchers suggest that, in addition to electrical energy, the ark could have emitted radiation or sound resonance capable of altering the consciousness of those around it. This idea gains traction when we look at other sacred objects from ancient cultures. In Egypt, sacred boats housed objects associated with the gods, while in Vedic India, sacred vehicles, or vimanas, were described as operating through a combination of sound, special metals, and sacred geometry. In all these cases, spiritual science and subtle technology were inseparable. The ark fits perfectly into this pattern, being an artifact that was, at once, an altar, an antenna, and a catalyst for divine connection. Its presence was not simply a matter of faith, it was the palpable, real experience of a field in motion. The field created by the ark can be compared to a toroidal field, a self-sustaining energy structure present in everything from atoms to galaxies. This type of field is the very basis of free energy technologies that Nikola Tesla sought to develop, and it is thought to be the fundamental energy structure of the human heart and the earth itself. One of the most intriguing moments in the biblical narrative is the story of the fall of Jericho. The ark was carried in procession, and on the seventh day, after the priests blew their trumpets, the walls of the city collapsed. This combination of sound vibration, spiritual intention, and the ark's presence seems to have triggered a physical reaction of monumental proportions. This suggests a conscious use of resonance and frequency, something now being rediscovered in modern fields like music therapy, quantum physics, and sound healing. In the ancient world, science and spirituality were inseparable. What we now consider technology was once part of an integrated wisdom based on harmony with the laws of the cosmos. Over time, however, this knowledge became fragmented, veiled, and ultimately lost. But traces remain, and the ark is one such trace, an artifact that encapsulated the understanding of how matter, spirit, and energy intertwine. When Jesus healed with a word, calmed the storm, or turned water into wine, he was activating principles of energy and vibration that modern physics is just beginning to understand. He resonated with subtle fields, harmonized frequencies, and transcended material limitations. Jesus was not simply a teacher of religious doctrine, he was a master of vibrational energetic principles, principles that the Ark of the Covenant itself seemed to embody. Perhaps that is why the Ark has disappeared, not by accident, but by design. Its role was fulfilled, and with the emergence of Jesus, the new tabernacle, the new manifestation of the divine presence, the cycle was completed. Yet, the memory of the Ark remains. It resonates deeply in the collective unconscious, inspiring seekers, scientists, and religious people alike. It serves as both a symbol and a reality, a reminder that there is a divine energy, a sacred presence, that lies within all of us, waiting to be awakened. The Ark is no longer just an ancient relic, it is the living truth of the divine spark within every human being. Are you ready to unlock a deeper understanding of spiritual wisdom that has shaped civilizations for centuries? To explore how ancient knowledge still pulses through the veins of humanity today, waiting to be rediscovered and lived once more? Let's delve into the mystery of the Ark of the Covenant, an artifact that holds not just historical significance, but a living connection to the divine. At the heart of this revelation is the recognition that everything vibrates: faith, the spoken word, sound, gesture, and even the stillness of a peaceful heart are frequencies that shape reality itself. The Ark, in its divine design, concentrated this spiritual energy into a tangible, material form. But the call now is no longer to seek a physical relic from the past, but to transform ourselves into living arks, a vessel for the divine presence. Jesus, from the beginning, understood this profound truth. He was not just a prophet, but the living embodiment of this sacred science, a mystery veiled to the world's eyes, yet eternally present for those brave enough to remember and awaken to it. From the moment the Ark was conceived through God's instructions to Moses, it was never merely an object for public worship. It was shrouded in secrecy, its power protected by strict protocols and guarded by a select few. This exclusivity was not the result of religious arrogance, but an essential measure of protection. The Ark's power required more than just physical preparation. It demanded inner purification, emotional control, and expanded consciousness. Access to it was reserved for a spiritual elite, the keepers of the deepest, invisible laws of the universe. Understanding these guardians is key to grasping why the Ark was veiled and how Jesus fits into this ongoing mystery. The first formal guardians of the Ark were the Levites, descendants of the tribe of Levi, who were chosen by God to serve in the sacred functions of the tabernacle. Even among them, however, there was a hierarchy. Only the high priest, a direct descendant of Aaron, could enter the Holy of Holies and approach the Ark, and this was a once-a-year event on Yom Kippur. But this wasn't a simple ritual, it was a journey of rigorous purification. The high priest underwent fasting, confession, ritual baths, and donned specific garments, all as part of a sacred preparation. The responsibility was so immense that, as ancient reports describe, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies with a rope tied around his ankle. If he perished in the divine presence, the rope allowed others to safely remove his body without risking their own lives. Yet, the Levitical priesthood, as sacred and important as it was, represented just the surface of an even older, deeper spiritual knowledge. This legacy began long before Moses, and its most enigmatic figure was Melchizedek, the king of righteousness and priest of the Most High God, who blessed Abraham with bread and wine. Melchizedek was a man without genealogy, with no beginning or end of life, an eternal figure whose presence in the Bible is both mysterious and profound. The Epistle to the Hebrews makes an important connection, stating that Jesus was a priest according to this higher order. This gives us a crucial clue. There existed a parallel spiritual lineage, one that operated outside of the formal, institutionalized systems, preserving the deepest secrets of divine presence. This sacred lineage was carried on through prophets, mystics, and kings, and Moses himself was not only the leader of the Israelites but also an initiate in this hidden wisdom. During his time in Egypt, Moses likely encountered mystery schools, where esoteric knowledge was passed down. Aaron, his brother, became the first high priest, but it was under King David that the Ark regained new prominence. David honored the Ark with dances, songs, and a deep reverence that sought not just to place it in a temple, but to create a space for it to dwell in the heart of Israel. David's son, Solomon, built the temple and placed the Ark in its center, but Solomon's wisdom extended beyond mere governance. He too sought hidden knowledge and connected with other cultures, gaining a reputation as a wise man and magician. After the Babylonian exile, the power of the Ark vanished from historical records. However, Jewish esoteric traditions did not die, they flourished, evolving into the Merkava tradition, described by the prophet Ezekiel as visions of a divine chariot with wheels within wheels. These mystical visions, many scholars suggest, were symbolic reformulations of the Ark's energy and presence. Though the physical Ark disappeared, its essence remained accessible to those who knew how to seek it. This knowledge continued through Jewish initiatory schools like the Essenes, who maintained deep practices of purification, Torah study, and contemplative practices. These schools kept their sacred texts hidden away, far from the reach of Roman authority and the corrupt priests of Jerusalem. Jesus, in all likelihood, was influenced by the Essene teachings, if not directly initiated into them. This would have given him access not only to the literal content of the law, but to the spirit behind it, the science of presence, the very essence of the Arkansas. But the guardians of the Ark were not limited to the Hebrew lineage. Evidence suggests that knowledge about the Ark, or similar divine devices, was shared among other peoples. The Ethiopians, for example, claim to this day that they guard the true Ark in Aksum, kept safe by secluded monks who never leave the chapel where it is said to rest. They believe that the Queen of Sheba took the Ark, or a replica, with her after her encounter with King Solomon. The Ethiopian rituals surrounding the Ark are shrouded in secrecy and reverence, passed down through generations of initiates. The Knights Templar, in the Middle Ages, are another group that has been linked to the Arkansas. According to legend, the Templars excavated beneath Solomon's temple and uncovered sacred artifacts, possibly even the Ark itself. From there, their influence grew exponentially, their architecture, symbols, and buildings imbued with mystical codes. Many of these codes echo the sacred geometry found in the design of the tabernacle. Although the Templars were eventually persecuted and destroyed, their wisdom did not disappear. It was preserved, hidden within esoteric orders and brotherhoods, passed on in silence through the ages. These groups, Levites, Essenes, Kabbalists, Ethiopians, and Templars, form a hidden thread that runs through the fabric of history. They are those who have guarded the secret, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. And in this thread, Jesus appears not as an outsider, but as the culminating link. He embodied the roles of king, priest, and prophet. He understood the science of sound healing, manifestation, and the invocation of divine presence. Jesus was more than just a religious leader, he was the living Ark, transforming divine presence into personhood, activating the function of the Ark within himself and later in his disciples, who carried this awakened consciousness forward. Today, we can affirm that the true guardians of the Ark are not just historical figures. They live among us, those who seek the truth with a pure heart, those who unite reason with intuition, and those who recognize the sacred not as a belief, but as a vibrational reality. These guardians do not carry titles, they are silent witnesses to the deep spiritual legacy of the Ark, the union between humanity and the divine, the merging of matter and spirit, the connection between heaven and earth. Now comes the question, what if you are one of these guardians? What if your spiritual quest, your yearning for something greater, your intuitive sense that there is more to life, is actually the call of the Ark echoing within you? Not as a lost object, but as a code waiting to be reactivated. Jesus knew this call. He heard it and responded with every gesture, every word, every silence. The Ark's mystery is not just a historical enigma, it is a living truth that lives on within us, waiting to be awakened. Are you ready to dive deeper into the sacred mysteries that have shaped human history and spirituality? To explore the profound shift in consciousness that Jesus sparked, moving us from the external to the internal, from ritual to living presence? Let's uncover the powerful significance of the Ark of the Covenant and its disappearance, revealing how it set the stage for a new kind of spiritual awakening, one that resides within every human heart. The destruction of the First Temple was not just a political catastrophe, it was a spiritual collapse. It marked a time when the divine presence, once so tangible, became an absence. The Ark, the very symbol of God's presence, disappeared, not merely as a physical object, but as a potent reminder of the people's spiritual disconnect. The Ark was no longer necessary at that moment because the people had lost the alignment needed to handle its incredible power. The divine cannot be wielded or used as an instrument for personal gain. When this happens, it withdraws. Thus, the Ark became a powerful absence, a void that spoke volumes, louder than any ritual ever could. This profound absence set the stage for the arrival of Jesus. He emerged at a time when the temple had been rebuilt, but its heart was empty. The Holy of Holies, once the sacred space where the Ark rested, was now devoid of its power. The rituals continued, but the essence of the temple, the true presence of God, was no longer there. The temple had become nothing more than a hollow shell, an imposing structure that lacked the soul that once filled it. Jesus understood this on a deep, spiritual level, which is why, when he entered the temple, he didn't come to restore the old system. Instead, he came to denounce it. His famous act of purifying the temple, driving out the money changers and merchants, was not simply a moment of indignation. It was a symbolic act of breaking away from a system that had lost its way, a system that had betrayed its original purpose. Jesus never sought to rebuild or recover the ark. He didn't mention it directly because he knew that the true presence no longer resided in external objects or structures. It was no longer about physical spaces. It was about the presence of God living within each of us. "The kingdom of God is within you," he said, pointing to the inward journey, the awakening of the divine within every sincere heart. The external ark had served its purpose, but now it was time for the internal ark to emerge, a time for the awakening of presence within each human being who genuinely seeks. But this doesn't mean that the ark was forgotten. Far from it, it was redefined. The ark became a symbol, not of something physical that could be touched with hands, but of something invisible that could only be felt with the heart. The disappearance of the ark paved the way for a new kind of spirituality, one that no longer relied on temples, priests, or complex rituals. Instead, it embraced an embodied, lived vibrational spirituality, one that Jesus himself manifested through his acts of healing, his teachings, and even in his silence. Theories about the ark being physically hidden in caves, especially under Mount Zion or in Qumran, continue to captivate scholars and seekers alike. The idea that secret texts from the Essenes may contain clues about its location persists, and perhaps it does rest somewhere, hidden and protected by initiates. But the fact that the ark has never been found may, in itself, be the greatest revelation. Its rediscovery is not needed to be worshipped again, but to remind us of the deeper path that lies within us all, the path of internalizing the sacred. There are whispers, too, that powerful religious institutions, such as the Vatican, may know more about the fate of the ark than they reveal. Ancient manuscripts, secret libraries, and relics have been protected by vows of silence for centuries, kept from public view. Access to this sacred knowledge is reserved for a select few, those who are trained to never cross certain boundaries. While controversial, this concealment may serve as a form of protection. The power of the ark cannot be entrusted to a world that still seeks to control and dominate it. It belongs to the pure of heart, the humble in spirit, and the conscious. At the same time, the disappearance of the ark invites us to reflect on the meaning of the torn veil at the moment of Jesus' death. The veil that once separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, the veil that kept the ark hidden and protected, was torn from top to bottom when Jesus gave up his spirit. This moment was far more than symbolic. It represented the end of the separation between God and man. It was a declaration that physical space was no longer necessary for access to the divine presence. What was once reserved for the high priest, a solitary figure allowed to enter the Holy of Holies once a year, was now accessible to every sincere heart. The sacred now resided in the awakened heart. Thus, the ark transformed. It became a symbol of something far greater than itself, a representation of the latent Christ consciousness within each of us. It embodied the ability to carry the presence, to vibrate in tune with the source, and to manifest miracles, healing, and wisdom. Jesus did not come to point to the ark. He came to be the new center of divine presence. And then, through his life, his words, and his death, he led us inward, so that we too could become living temples, carrying the presence of God within us. The absence of the ark is not a loss, it is an invitation, a transition. Perhaps, just perhaps, when humanity is ready to understand this truth, the ark will reappear. But it will not return as a golden object to be venerated. It will return as an awakened collective consciousness, a point of light among the nations. It will be a vibration so high that its presence will be undeniable, not because we will see it with our eyes, but because we will feel it, deeply, within us. It will be exactly where it has always been, at the center of who we are, in the silence between our thoughts, in the fire that burns within us, never consuming, only transforming. From the beginning of his public ministry, Jesus did something extraordinary for his time. He challenged the sacred structures, not by directly attacking them, but by announcing a new kind of sacred space. He did not overthrow the temple. Instead, he pointed to the existence of another temple, the body. He didn't renounce the rituals, he transcended them. His relationship with the sacred was not based on external worship, but on internal manifestation. Every word, every gesture, and even his very existence pointed to a radical shift in the spiritual paradigm. The time of the external tabernacle had ended, and now, the body itself became the temple, with the divine presence residing at its center, alive and pulsating. This teaching is beautifully captured in John 1 verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Greek word for dwelt here is eskanos, meaning pitched his tent. In other words, Christ didn't just enter the world, he tabernacled among us. He became the new sacred space, the new tent where the divine manifested. This changes everything. Jesus is now the meeting point between heaven and earth. He is the new Holy of Holies, alive, vibrant, and accessible. There is no longer a need for a fixed place or a separate sacred object because the presence of God now walks among us. This truth deepens with each miracle Jesus performed. When he healed, it wasn't just an act of compassion, it was the manifestation of the energy of presence. When he calmed the storms, liberated the oppressed, or multiplied loaves of bread, he was demonstrating that where Christ is, the field of the ark is also present. He didn't need to carry the sacred object, he was the new Arkansas. Just as the ark required a tabernacle to house it, Jesus needed a purified, surrendered body to embody the presence of God. His entire life was a preparation for this. In the Gospels, Jesus makes statements that echo these ancient mysteries. He says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rebuild it." The religious authorities of the time misunderstood, thinking he was referring to the physical temple. But Jesus was speaking of his own body, the living temple, the new center of the new covenant. By declaring this, Jesus wasn't just challenging the existing religious structure, he was offering a new model. He was showing that every human being, by following his path, could also become a dwelling place of the divine. This shift is profound. Until then, all worship revolved around sacred spaces, the tabernacle, the temple, the Holy of Holies. Everything was directed outward. But Jesus reversed the flow. "The kingdom of God is within you," he declared. The dwelling of the divine is no longer a separate place, it's a state of being, a vibration, a consciousness. The spiritual journey has become inward. The search for the ark is no longer geographical, it is psychological, emotional, energetic. The path now leads within. How does one access this new Holy of Holies? Jesus provided the clues: purity of heart, prayer in secret, total surrender. He valued silence, compassion, and fasting. He taught that faith has the power to move mountains, to transform reality. He, too, retreated into the desert in solitude, just as the ancient priests did in the tabernacle. But now, there were no incense or animal sacrifices. Instead, there was intention, connection, and awareness. When Jesus died on the cross, the veil of the temple, the veil that once separated the Holy of Holies, was torn from top to bottom. This moment was far more than symbolic. It represented the end of separation between man and the divine. Access to the presence was now direct. What was once touched only by the high priest, once a year, was now accessible to every sincere heart. The new tabernacle had been inaugurated, and Jesus was the living way to this access. When he declared, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me," he wasn't just making a theological statement. He was declaring that the path to the divine was no longer external, it was internal, within the heart of every seeker. Are you ready to embark on a journey that could change the way you see yourself and the world around you? A path that leads to the deepest spiritual awakening, where you realize that the divine presence has always been within you, waiting for you to rediscover it. Let's explore how the disappearance of the Ark of the Covenant is not a loss, but a profound invitation for each of us to become the new temple, to activate the presence of the divine within ourselves. Jesus did not come to offer a new religion or to return us to a set of rituals. Instead, he revealed a way to reconnect, a pathway to a profound transformation of the soul. He didn't offer rules or external rituals, he offered the activation of being, a return to the source. This vision, this model of soul transmutation, is a reflection of the very path the tabernacle once represented, from the outer court, all the way to the Holy of Holies. But now, this path is not confined by walls, not bound by physical structures. It is shifted to an internal, spiritual journey, where the body itself becomes the new temple. The idea that our bodies can house the divine presence is not just poetic or metaphorical, it is scientifically grounded. Neuroscience shows us that when the heart is in a state of gratitude, it emits coherent electromagnetic fields that influence both the brain and the body. These fields can literally alter the state of our being. Similarly, quantum physics reveals how intention can affect the behavior of matter itself. For millennia, spirituality has taught that the divine presence inhabits the space of inner silence. These discoveries do nothing but confirm what Jesus demonstrated. The temple is no longer a place, it's within you. And just as the ark once radiated God's presence, so too can that same presence vibrate within your heart. Jesus did not seek to restore the external temple, nor did he try to rebuild the Arkansas. Instead, his mission was to transcend it, to embody it fully. He became the model of the complete human being, in perfect alignment with the source of all life. His body became the new tabernacle, his consciousness, the new Holy of Holies, his words, the new sacred fire, and his life, the new covenant. The divine presence that once required sacrifices to invoke now naturally flowed from him because he was a pure channel. This presence was contagious. It wasn't imposed, nor did it need words to communicate. The atmosphere shifted when he entered a room. Those who were in his presence felt it. Those who touched him, even in their most desperate state, were healed. His mere presence had the power to transform lives without force, without effort. This is the mark of divine presence, the same presence that once made the ark radiate power and life now walked barefoot, touching lepers, gazing into souls, and speaking words that woke the dead to new life. This presence, the essence of the ark, has not disappeared. It lives on, it pulses, and it calls out to us. Because Jesus didn't come just to show us this divine reality, he came to invite us into it. He called his disciples, and by extension, all of us, to become like him. He promised that we would do even greater works than he did. He assured us that we would receive the Spirit, the presence, the strength to activate the same power within ourselves. And this was not a promise for some distant future, it is a present reality. The ark is alive. The tabernacle walks among us. The new temple is in every being who surrenders, purifies themselves, and says with their heart, "Here I am." For centuries, seekers, theologians, mystics, and archaeologists have scoured the earth in search of the Ark of the Covenant. From deserts to sacred mountains, from sealed caves to secret archives, many have devoted their lives to uncovering its hidden location. But what if all this searching has been misguided? What if the ark was never truly lost, but merely hidden beneath the thickest veil of all, the veil of inner forgetfulness? The most disconcerting, yet liberating truth is this: the Ark of the Covenant lives within us. It waits to be reactivated by those brave enough to undertake the most sacred of all journeys, the journey inward, to one's own center. To understand this revelation fully, we must revisit what the Ark truly represented in its essence. It was the point of contact between God and man, the place where glory manifested, the channel through which the invisible became visible. In the center of the tabernacle, surrounded by veils and silence, the ark radiated an energy that transcended words. And now, this same structure exists within each human being. Our body is the tabernacle, our mind is the holy place, and our heart is the holy of holies. At the very center of our being, dormant and waiting, is the presence of the divine. Many spiritual traditions around the world echo this truth. In Hinduism, the body is seen as a vessel traversed by energy centers called chakras, culminating in the heart and crown, which are centers of divine consciousness. In Kabbalah, the human being is viewed as a microcosm of the tree of life, with the sacred Shekinah residing in the center of the soul. In Sufism, the concept of the eye of the heart speaks to the place where God reveals himself to the seeker. In all these traditions, the teaching is the same: what we seek externally has always been within. The journey back to the inner ark is not easy. It requires courage, surrender, and radical sincerity. It requires us to navigate through the veils of the mind, to purify our emotions, and to undo the conditioning that has kept us trapped in illusion. It demands that we silence the noise of the world in order to hear the whisper of our soul. Above all, it requires trust, because there is no fixed map. Each one of us must chart a unique path. But the signs are there. The restlessness that stirs deep within us, the dreams that reveal forgotten truths, the encounters that touch our souls, these are all signs that lead us to the center. Jesus taught this with sublime clarity. His words were an invitation to introspection, a call to go inward. "Enter into your room and in secret pray to your Father," he said. "The kingdom is within you. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." He did not point outward, he pointed inward. He did not seek to build a new physical temple, he sought to ignite an internal awareness. When Jesus promised to send the Spirit, he was ensuring that the presence of the ark would no longer be confined to a single place. It would be multiplied in each being that made room to receive it. This internal activation of presence requires simple, yet powerful practices: silence, meditation, intentional prayer, fasting, forgiveness, contemplating nature, and serving others. Each of these practices tunes us into the inner field of consciousness, aligning us with the frequency of the source. As we engage in these practices, layers of ego and fear begin to fall away, making room for the light of the inner Holy of Holies to manifest. This light does not appear as a fleeting emotion, it becomes a state of being, a quiet certainty that God dwells within. The body, once merely seen as a biological container, is now revealed as the living temple. The heart, more than a mere organ, becomes the altar, the very place where the divine presence resides. When vibrating in love and gratitude, the heart emits electromagnetic fields that not only alter our internal state but also the world around us. This is not just a scientific truth, but one that has been experienced by mystics for millennia. Where there is an awakened heart, there is an activated Arkansas. Where there is conscious presence, there is the living Shekinah. This discovery radically transforms how we live. We stop searching for answers in external systems and begin to listen to the inner wisdom that has always been within us. We no longer seek validation from others. Instead, we resonate with our own essence. Decisions become lighter, relationships deepen, and life takes on a new rhythm, one that is more serene, more sacred, and more connected. The journey is no longer about conquering the world. It is about reconnecting with the part of us that has never been separated from the source. And this brings us to a truth that few dare to declare: you are the bearer of the Arkansas. Yes, you. Regardless of your past, your mistakes, your flaws, within you lies an untouched, pure, luminous space. This space is where the presence waits, patiently, for your acknowledgement. This space does not depend on religion, doctrine, or culture. It is universal, eternal, and available to all. It is the point of contact between the finite and the infinite, and it pulses gently within you, waiting to be remembered. This is why the ark was never truly lost, it merely fell asleep, just like us. Its absence from the outer world was an invitation to the inner world. Its concealment was the key to awakening a new consciousness, one where we are the temple, and worship is life lived with presence. Jesus knew this. He didn't just live this reality, he initiated us into it. And today, every step we take inward is also a step toward him. The map to the inner ark is the same for every mystical journey, a descent into the self, a confrontation with our shadows, and a reunion with the light. Every pain, every loss, every dark night of the soul brings us closer to the truth that the ark has always been here, in us. Are you ready to step into a new dimension of spiritual awakening, where the divine presence is not something to be sought outside of you, but activated within? To realize that the sacred Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of divine connection, has always resided inside you, waiting to be reawakened? Let's dive into this transformative journey and explore how this profound shift from external worship to internal manifestation changes everything. The transformation of the human soul is not a shortcut, it's a journey of purification, surrender, and realization. Just as the Ark of the Covenant once required sacred rituals to channel the divine, so too does the path to awakening require us to pass through the veil of our own limitations. But as we do, we don't just encounter the divine, we encounter our true identity. The Ark is not a mere object, it is a state of being, a frequency that pulses within us. And when activated, this presence radiates outward. We touch others without speaking, healing without intention, and bringing peace where there was once chaos. We become living portals of the divine presence, fulfilling the promise made by God, I will make my dwelling in you. For millennia, the Ark has been a mystery carefully hidden, misinterpreted, and even commercialized. Yet, its essence has remained unshaken, surviving time's distortions, false interpretations, and the limitations imposed by human institutions. The Ark is far more than a relic of history, it is a powerful reminder of the direct, unbroken connection between humanity and the divine. And no one understood this more profoundly than Jesus. He knew exactly where the true Ark resided, not in some hidden cave or sacred temple, but in the heart of every human being who was willing to open themselves to the divine presence. While the religious world looked forward to the reconstruction of the temple and the possible rediscovery of the Ark as an apocalyptic event, Jesus offered something infinitely more transformative, the complete replacement of the old spiritual paradigm with a new one. By becoming the living tabernacle, allowing the divine presence to fully manifest through him, Jesus dissolved the need for the Ark as an external object. His life and teachings were not about restoring the past, they were about revealing a new state of consciousness. This awareness was the true secret that Jesus carried. He knew that the divine presence is not something we invoke, it is something we recognize. God does not only dwell in sacred places or in material objects like the Ark, God pulses everywhere, especially within those human beings who open themselves with humility, surrender, and love. Jesus understood that the power of the Ark was not in its precious materials, but in the spiritual frequency it channeled. And now, this frequency could inhabit anyone willing to become a living channel of light. The world, however, was not ready for such a revelation, and perhaps it still isn't. That's why Jesus spoke in parables, used metaphors and symbols, and often taught through silence rather than words. The mysteries of the kingdom were not meant for the curious, but for those willing to open their hearts. Jesus understood that truth, when discovered too early by immature minds, could be distorted, controlled, or used for domination. So, he kept the greatest secret in plain sight, accessible only to those who tread the path of the heart. Throughout the ages, many have tried to decipher the lost code of Jesus. Some have searched through ancient manuscripts, others through archaeology, and still others through esoteric traditions. But what Jesus offered was not a hidden secret to be uncovered, it was a living model. His life was the manual. His behavior, His compassion, His spiritual authority, His unconditional love, and His magnetic presence were the full manifestation of what the Ark represented, the embodied, conscious, vibrant, and accessible divine presence. Here's what the world still fails to grasp: there is no longer any separation between heaven and earth. The veil has been torn. There is no need to seek the divine outside of ourselves, for it has always resided within us. Jesus did not come to save us from something external. He came to remind us of who we truly are. He came to remind us of our divine origin, of the temple we embody, of the energy we carry, and of the call that has always been within us. He came to teach us that we do not need intermediaries between ourselves and the source. We are children of the divine, filled with spiritual inheritance, ready to awaken to our true nature. In this context, the Ark becomes the ultimate metaphor for who we are when we awaken. The prophecies about the return of the Ark, the new temple, and the Messianic age take on a new meaning. The new temple will not be built by human hands. It will be created by an elevated collective consciousness. The return of the Ark will not be an excavation of a physical object but a spiritual awakening on a global scale. The Messiah, the one who embodies the Word, has already revealed the path. Now, it is up to humanity to follow the steps He left behind, not as rigid dogma, but as a living journey of transformation. We are living in a prophetic time, a time where ancient truths are being remembered, where mysteries are becoming accessible again, and where the inner call is being heard more clearly than ever before. More and more people are feeling this call, many without knowing how to name it. It is a longing for something greater, something truer, something fuller. It is the remembrance of presence, the Ark pulsating once again in the hearts of those who dare to turn inward. This new era demands a new attitude, one of conscious bearers, not anxious seekers. It is not about repeating old rituals but about updating their essence. Every gesture made with love, every word spoken with truth, every moment of silence filled with presence, this is the living liturgy of the new temple. Every being who becomes aware of their sacred nature becomes a spark from the reactivated Ark, a living witness that the kingdom has already arrived and is within us. Jesus knew that the fullness of the divine spirit would no longer fit within stone temples. That's why He promised us the Comforter, the Spirit of Truth, the invisible yet irresistible presence that once rested upon the Ark between the cherubim, now rests upon all those who become living tabernacles. The prophecy is being fulfilled: I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. And when this happens, the world will change. Reality will bend to consciousness. The impossible will dissolve, and the divine will incarnate in every moment. The final revelation is simple yet profound: the Ark is you. Not out of ego, but from spiritual identity. You are the meeting point, the altar, the space between the cherubim. When you are silent, it speaks. When you love, it shines. When you forgive, it heals. When you live with presence, it manifests. There is no longer anything to seek outside. The journey is to activate what is already within. This awakening is not an individual event but a collective one. When enough human beings activate their inner Ark, a new vibrational field will take root on Earth, and a new planetary consciousness will emerge. What was once promised will become visible. The Earth will be a temple, humanity will be the priesthood, and love will be the manifest presence among all, in all, and for all. This is the truth that Jesus carried. The truth that still awaits us to fully understand. And perhaps, at the end of it all, the question was never, where is the Ark, but rather, when will we remember that it has always been here? Now, I want to hear from you, unfettered, with an open mind and heart. If the Ark of the Covenant were alive within you, how would you feel its presence in your daily life? What was the moment in your life when you felt that sacred connection within your own heart? Share with us in the comments, not just as a story, but as a conscious expression. Every word you write here contributes to a collective field that activates this presence within all of us. We are building this together. The demonstration is not solitary, it's a shared alliance. If you felt something awaken within you during this video, don't stop now. The next revelation is waiting to pierce through you. Click now on the next video on your screen, The Hidden Code of Sin, the lost teaching of Jesus that could change the world. In it, we reveal the hidden code given to Moses and that Jesus mastered in silence, a lost teaching that could change everything you know about spirituality, inner power, and the true role of humanity. Until then, keep walking with presence. Keep awakening. You are part of the new Arkansas. You are mind unfettered.